Hello and welcome to Demand Sage Advanced. Today we're going to talk about how to pull retention data into your KPI report. Now, if you're anything like us, you are looking at SaaS user retention with a couple of HubSpot custom properties. In our case, we have a property that corresponds with the first install date, and we have a property that corresponds with the most recent usage date. And in order to create a nice backend tab of these, I've used my report builder, which, if you don't know, can be accessed by going to add-ons, Demand Sage for HubSpot, build custom report. And in here, I've chosen contacts as the entity. I've chosen the count of contacts as my metric, and I'm grouping rows by last product use date and columns by first install date. So basically every column represents the first day that somebody installed Demand Sage, and every row represents the first day, the most recent day that somebody used Demand Sage. I have added some filters. I have set the first install date to within 10 weeks ago, and I have set the last product use date to make sure that it is non-null. And what that gives me is this large, multi-column, multi-row back-end worksheet that I can go with, which I can also then use as a basis for calculations, leveraging the power of sheets. So in order to do that, I have run a few calculations. Here we have whatever the date is in each column in my backend tab, and each cell should be the number of days it's been between the install date and the most recent usage date. We have done a little bit of finagling to make sure that if the install date is before the last product use date in this column, it doesn't show up. It becomes a null property. But effectively, how it looks is if the first install date if the most recent product use date minus the first install date is greater than 0, then that calculation, the number of days in between, populates this cell. If not, we leave it as null. And this gives us basically a chart that we can use to say, all right, anybody in this particular cell in our backend sheet has a retention of X days. And then beyond that, we can run some metrics. So I have this retention total by day sheet tab that I've made, where if the last product use date minus the original install date is greater than 0, then we pull in the number of days it's been from our retention time difference tab. And that gives us basically the number of days that it's been for anybody who signed up on this day to the last time that they actually used the product. We also multiply it by the number of actual users in this particular area. So if we have 2 users who have a retention of 1 day, we just take 1 times 2, and the total redemption, or the total retention for this particular cell is 2. And it goes on beyond that. So this allows us to have total installs, which is just a sum of everybody, regardless of when they last used the product, who installed on a given day. The average retention, which is an average of the metric we just discussed, which is in each cell the number of days between install date and the last use date times the number of people who fall into that cell. The median retention, just same thing, but the median. We have a number of, we have a count of people who had a 1 or more week retention, which is done in another tab. And then we break that one down by rate. So what percentage of people who signed up on this day had retention beyond 1 week, and we did the same for 1 month. So what we've done then is in yet another tab, I've just copied the first 8 rows of this retention total by day, and then done a transpose because it's kind of important to note here that if you want to use the DemandSage KPI report for this, it has to be columns. It has to be looking at particular columns. So going on to that, I have set up in our dashboard some manual metrics. And if you don't know how to use manual metrics in the DemandSage KPI dashboard, I would invite you to go watch another YouTube video that we've done about how to do exactly that. It's our introduction to the KPI report video. As you can see here, I have 1 week retention total from the tab retention KPI. The date range you can see is A14 through 77. The value is E14 through 77. If we go look here, we see that this is our date range. E is our raw number of people who were 1+ week retention. G, which is also pulled in there, is the raw number of people who are 1 or more month retention users. And once I've got that here, I've also got a new installs from the same tab, which is the total installs, every install that we got over the course of a particular day. And once that's all loaded here into the manual section of the KPI report, they become available in the drop-down menu to be part of your dashboard. So we look under manual metrics. We've got, say, let's start with new installs, and we'll do 1 week retention total and 1 month retention total. So now we've got a running tab of just the raw number of installs, installs that came back to us at least a week later, installs that came back to us at least a month later. And we can do some math on this as well. So because the 1 month one doesn't seem to be playing nice with me right now, I'll make this a calculated metric. 1 week retention rate. Now, to do this, I want to take 1 week retention total divided by new installs over the course of a given week. And I can just spread this out throughout the whole thing. And now I get a running tab of what percentage of my new installs came back and used the product at least a week later by time. And that's how you do retention with DemandSage and HubSpot. You can use this for any date comparison you want, and this will provide you with a running total that updates nightly of whatever date range metric you're looking at.